There is a version of you that you have never met. He is waiting somewhere ahead of you. Maybe 1 year from now. Maybe 3 years from now. Maybe 5. He wakes up in a life that was built by the decisions you are making today. And here's the uncomfortable question. When that person looks back at you, will he feel grateful? Or will he wish you had been braver? Think about that, because the life you want is not usually destroyed by one enormous mistake. It is usually shaped by hundreds of tiny decisions that seemed insignificant at the time. The extra hour you wasted, the conversation you avoided, the opportunity you were afraid to take, the money you spent because you wanted comfort instead of security, the morning you said, I'll start tomorrow. The habit you knew was hurting you, but continued because stopping felt uncomfortable. The goal you quietly abandoned because nobody was applauding you. None of those moments looked like a life-changing moment. But they were, and that is what makes life so strange. We expect our future to be determined by dramatic events. We imagine that one day something enormous will happen. One opportunity, one lucky break. One person, one decision. One moment that changes everything. But most lives don't change like that. Most lives change quietly. A person wakes up one morning and realizes they have become someone they never intended to become. Not because of one terrible decision, because of thousands of small decisions made without thinking. And somewhere else, another person wakes up and realizes something completely different. They have more confidence, more peace, more discipline, more options, more strength, more freedom. And they may not even remember the exact day their life changed, because it wasn't one day. It was every day they chose differently. Let me ask you something. What if the most important decision you will make today is one nobody will ever see? What if it isn't a business decision? What if it isn't about money? What if it isn't about your career? What if it is simply the decision to do what you know is right when nobody is watching? To get up when you want to stay in bed. To close the screen when you know you have work to do. To save money when you could spend it. To study when entertainment is calling. To walk away from a destructive relationship. To say no when everyone expects you to say yes. To keep your promise to yourself. Because every time you make a decision, you are doing more than choosing an action. You are voting for a future identity. You are telling yourself, this is the kind of person I am. And that is where this becomes deeper than motivation, because your future is not waiting somewhere outside of you. Your future is being trained into existence by your present behavior. You are rehearsing tomorrow today, and you may not realize it. A person who repeatedly chooses comfort is rehearsing a life of dependence on comfort. A person who repeatedly chooses discipline is rehearsing a life of self-trust. A person who repeatedly avoids difficult conversations is rehearsing avoidance. A person who repeatedly faces difficult things is rehearsing courage. A person who keeps breaking promises to himself slowly teaches his own mind that his word means nothing. But a person who keeps small promises begins to develop something incredibly powerful: trust. Not the trust of other people, the trust of yourself. And there is a kind of confidence that comes only from knowing. When I tell myself I will do something, I do it. That confidence cannot be purchased. It cannot be faked. You cannot put it on for a photograph. It is built privately, decision by decision, day by day. And maybe that is why you are here right now. Maybe you have reached a point where you are tired of knowing what you should do and still doing something else. Maybe you have made promises to yourself before. I'll get serious. I'll save. I'll exercise. I'll learn. I'll stop wasting time. I'll leave that behind. I'll finally start. And then life happened, a difficult day, a bad mood, a distraction, a disappointment. A little comfort. And the promise disappeared. But let me tell you something that most people don't want to hear. Your future does not care what you intended to do. Your future is built from what you repeatedly do Opinions matter, but decisions shape lives. And sometimes the hardest decision is not choosing between two obvious paths. Sometimes the hardest decision is choosing between what feels good now and what will feel right later. That is the battle. Right now versus later. Comfort versus growth. Relief versus progress. Approval versus self-respect. Fear versus possibility. And almost every important area of your life contains that battle. Look at your finances. You can spend now or build security later. Look at your health. You can indulge now or strengthen your body for later. Look at your skills. You can scroll now or become more capable later. Look at your relationships. You can protect your ego now or have an honest conversation that creates something better later. Look at your dreams. You can avoid rejection now or become the person who can handle rejection later. The present always asks a question, what do you want right now? But your future asks a different question. What did you choose when nobody could see the consequences yet? And those are not always the same answer. There was a man who spent years telling himself he was going to change his financial life. He wasn't irresponsible in some dramatic way. He worked. He paid bills. He lived a normal life, but whenever he earned a little extra, he found a reason to spend it. A new phone, a dinner, a trip, something for the house, something he deserved. And every time, he told himself the same story. I work hard. I deserve to enjoy my money. There was nothing wrong with enjoying money. The problem was that he had never learned to enjoy the feeling of being financially secure. He only knew how to enjoy the feeling of immediate consumption. Years passed. Then one day an unexpected expense arrived. Not catastrophic, just enough to expose the truth. He didn't have enough saved. He looked at his bank account and felt something he had been avoiding for years. Not poverty. Not even fear. Regret, because suddenly he understood that all those little purchases had not been little. They had been votes, and every vote had been cast for the present version of himself. Never for the man he wanted to become. That night he sat alone and asked himself a question that changed his thinking. What would the older version of me wish I had done with the money I spent today? That question became uncomfortable, then powerful. He didn't become wealthy overnight. He didn't discover a secret investment. He simply began asking a different question before making decisions. Will I be glad I did this? That question changed how he spent. Then it changed how he worked, then how he planned, then how he thought. And eventually, his financial situation began changing. But the money wasn't the deepest transformation. The deepest transformation was that he stopped living only for the person he was in the moment. He began living in partnership with the person he was becoming. Let that idea sit with you. What would happen if you stopped asking only, what do I want? And started asking, what will the person I am becoming need from me? That's different, because your future self cannot come back in time and make today's decision for you. You have to do it on his behalf. You have to protect a person who doesn't have a voice yet. You have to make sacrifices for someone you haven't met yet. And sometimes that requires imagination. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself 5 years from now. Don't imagine the perfect fantasy. Imagine an ordinary morning. You wake up, you look around. What does your life look like? Where are you living? What kind of work are you doing? What does your body feel like? How much control do you have over your time? Who is around you? What kind of person have you become? Now ask yourself something harder. Which parts of that future are being created by what you are doing today? Because some of your future is already under construction. Your habits are building it. Your environment is building it. Your attention is building it. Your relationships are building it. Your financial decisions are building it. Your standards are building it. And your excuses are building it too. That's the part people don't like. We love to believe our future is waiting for us. But often, Our future is already being assembled, piece by piece. And the frightening thing is that you can spend years building a life you never consciously chose. You can inherit habits from your environment. You can inherit fears from your childhood. You can inherit expectations from society. You can inherit beliefs from people who never question their own beliefs. And then one day you call it your life. But is it? Or is it simply the result of decisions you never consciously made? Let me tell you about another kind of decision. The decision to stop. A young woman once reached a point in her career where she was miserable. She was successful by every external measurement. Good salary, good position, good reputation. People told her she was lucky. But every Sunday evening, she felt a heaviness she couldn't explain. She would sit there knowing Monday was coming, and she kept telling herself, just another year. Just until I save more? Just until I get promoted? Just until I get promoted? Just until things calm down. But things never calmed down because she wasn't dealing with a temporary season. She was living a life she had stopped questioning. One day, she received an email from an old colleague who had left the company years earlier. The colleague was doing something completely different, not glamorous, not guaranteed, but meaningful. They spoke for an hour. At the end of the conversation, the woman asked, "Weren't you scared to leave?" The colleague laughed. "Of course I was. Then why did you do it?" "Because I realized I was already paying a price for staying." That sentence stayed with her. I was already paying a price for staying. Think about that. We often calculate the cost of change. We rarely calculate the cost of remaining the same. How much does procrastination cost? How much does staying in the wrong environment cost? How much does avoiding responsibility cost? How much does spending 10 years doubting yourself cost? How much does waiting for confidence cost? How much does saying someday cost? There is always a price. The question is whether you pay it consciously. Because sometimes the decision you are afraid to make is not the dangerous decision. Sometimes refusing to make it is. You may be afraid to start a business, but staying dependent on a job you hate also has a cost. You may be afraid to speak, but remaining silent has a cost. You may be afraid to leave, but staying has a cost. You may be afraid to fail, but never trying has a cost that you may not recognize until years later. And here's the paradox. The pain of discipline is visible now. The pain of regret is often invisible until later. That's why people choose poorly. They respond to immediate pain and ignore delayed consequences. Human beings are easily persuaded by what is immediate. The phone is immediate. The notification is immediate. The pleasure is immediate. The excuse is immediate. The reward is immediate. But your future is delayed. Your health is delayed. Your wealth is delayed. Your confidence is delayed. Your expertise is delayed. Your freedom is delayed. So the person who cannot tolerate delay becomes a prisoner of the present. And the person who learns to delay gratification begins to purchase something far more valuable. Opposites. Freedom, strength, choice. That's why discipline isn't punishment. Discipline is the ability to refuse a smaller reward because you understand a larger one is being built. But here's where people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline means becoming hard. It doesn't. Real discipline means becoming trustworthy. It means you can trust yourself when emotions change, because emotions are unreliable. One morning you wake up inspired. The next morning you don't. One day you believe in yourself. The next day you question everything. One week you are focused. The next week life becomes difficult. If your behavior depends on how you feel, your future becomes dependent on your mood. And moods are a terrible architect. You need something deeper, a standard, a decision already made. I do this whether I feel like it or not. That sentence can change a life, not because it sounds powerful, because it removes negotiation. Every time you negotiate with yourself about a commitment you've already made, you weaken your own authority. I'll do it later. Just 5 more minutes. I deserve a break. I'll start Monday. I'll make up for it tomorrow. And tomorrow becomes another negotiation until eventually you are exhausted not from doing the work, but from constantly arguing with yourself about whether you should. Imagine how much energy would be available to you if certain decisions were already settled. You don't debate whether you will protect your health. You don't debate whether you will learn. You don't debate whether you will keep your word. You don't debate whether you will save. You don't debate whether you will protect your attention. The decision is made. Now you simply execute. That is freedom. And perhaps one of the greatest decisions you can make is deciding what you no longer negotiate with. Think about your life. What keeps coming back? The same distraction, the same excuse, the same relationship pattern, the same financial mistake, the same late nights, the same negative thought, the same promise, the same failure. Maybe the problem isn't that you don't know what to do. Maybe the problem is that you keep reopening decisions that should have been closed. And every time you reopen them, the weaker version of you gets a vote. There is another question I want you to consider. Who are you becoming when nobody is rewarding you yet? Because most transformation happens in that invisible period where the results haven't arrived. You work, nothing happens. You study, nothing happens. You save, nobody notices. You exercise, your body doesn't change immediately. You practice, you still make mistakes. You wake up early, nobody congratulates you. You say no to distractions. Nobody gives you a medal. And this is where many people quit. Not because the process doesn't work, because the process hasn't produced visible evidence yet. They need proof before commitment. But sometimes commitment must come before proof. A farmer doesn't plant a seed because he can already see the tree. He plants because he understands what a seed can become. You have to learn to respect invisible progress. There are seasons where your life looks unchanged while something important is changing underneath. Your discipline is strengthening. Your judgment is improving. Your patience is developing. Your standards are rising. Your identity is changing. And then one day the external results catch up. But if you quit during the invisible stage, you never meet the person you were becoming. That is why your future self deserves your patience. There may be a version of you right now that feels behind. Maybe you compare yourself with people who seem further ahead. You see their money, their relationships, their careers, their confidence, their achievements. And you wonder, why am I not there? Be careful. Comparison can make you abandon your own process. You don't know what decisions created their current life, and they don't know the decisions you are making today. Your responsibility isn't to become someone else's future. Your responsibility is to become the strongest version of your own possibility. And that requires another difficult decision. The decision to stop needing everyone to understand. There will be people who don't understand why you're changing, why you're saving, why you're working late, why you're studying, why you're leaving certain environments, why you don't want to waste every weekend, why you are becoming more selective. They may call you boring, obsessed, too serious, different. Let them. Not everyone can understand a destination they have never wanted to reach. Sometimes you have to disappoint people in the present so you don't disappoint yourself in the future. That doesn't mean becoming selfish. It means becoming responsible for your life, because eventually nobody else has to live with the consequences of your choices. You do. You are the one who will wake up with your habits. You are the one who will live inside your body. You are the one who will carry your financial decisions. You are the one who will remember the opportunities you ignored. You are the one who will know whether you gave yourself an honest attempt. That's why self-respect is built differently from self-esteem. Self-esteem says, I like myself. Self-respect says, I keep promises to myself. Self-esteem can rise and fall with circumstances. Self-respect is built through evidence. You tell yourself you will wake up early. You wake up. You tell yourself you will study. You study. You tell yourself you will save. You save. You tell yourself you will walk away from what destroys you. You walk away. And slowly your mind receives a message. I can trust this person. That person is you. And once you trust yourself, courage becomes easier. Not because fear disappears. Because you know you can handle yourself when fear appears. That is an enormous difference. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is knowing that fear does not get the final vote. And every important future contains moments when fear will demand the vote. There will be a phone call you don't want to make, a door you need to knock on, a proposal you need to send, a skill you need to learn, a failure you need to recover from, a person you need to confront, a habit you need to destroy, a dream you need to admit you still care about. And in those moments, your future self will not ask, were you comfortable? He will ask, did you choose courage when courage was expensive? That's the question. Not whether you were perfect. Not whether you never failed. Not whether every decision worked. Did you choose consciously? Because here's another truth. Choosing wisely does not guarantee success. You can make the right decision and still fail. You can work hard and still lose. You can be disciplined and still face rejection. You can prepare and still encounter circumstances you couldn't control. Life is not a vending machine. You don't insert discipline and automatically receive success. But good decisions increase your capacity to handle whatever comes. That's why the goal isn't to control every outcome. The goal is to become the kind of person who can respond intelligently to outcomes. That is a deeper form of power. Suppose you lose. What do you do next? Suppose someone rejects you. What do you do next? Suppose your plan fails. What do you do next? Suppose you make a terrible mistake. What do you do next? Your future is shaped not only by what happens to you, but by what you repeatedly decide after what happens to you. Failure can become evidence that you are incapable, or it can become information. Rejection can become humiliation, or it can become redirection. A setback can become an identity, or it can become a lesson. The event is real, but your interpretation becomes part of your future. And this is where your choices become incredibly powerful. You cannot always choose what happens, but you can practice choosing what happens next. That is responsibility, not blame. Responsibility, blame asks, whose fault is this? Responsibility asks, what can I do now? That second question creates movement, and movement creates possibility. There was a man who lost his business after years of work. He had employees, bills, a family, a reputation. When everything collapsed, he felt like his identity had collapsed with it. For months, he kept replaying the same questions. How did I let this happen? Why me? What will people think? Then one morning his daughter asked him a simple question. Are you going to try again? He looked at her. He didn't have an answer because trying again meant risking failure again. But something in that question disturbed him. He realized that he had been waiting for the past to change before allowing himself to move forward. The past wasn't going to change. So he changed the question. Not, how do I get back what I lost? But, what can I build from what I learned? That question didn't make the pain disappear. It gave the pain a direction. He started again. Smaller, wiser, more cautious. He made mistakes. He adjusted. He learned. Years later, he wasn't simply financially stable. He was a different man. More patient, more careful, more grateful, more resilient. And if you had asked him whether he wished the failure had never happened, he might have said yes emotionally. But intellectually, he understood something profound. The failure had introduced him to a version of himself success had never required him to become. Sometimes the person you need to become is hidden behind the difficulty you are trying so hard to avoid. That's why your future self may owe his strength to the decisions you make during your hardest season. Not because pain is automatically good. Pain isn't automatically good. But what you build from pain can become valuable. You can become bitter or wiser. You can become cynical or discerning. You can become passive or responsible. You can become smaller or stronger. And the choice often happens quietly, one thought at a time, one response at a time, one morning at a time. This is why you must protect your mind, because attention is one of the most valuable forms of currency you possess. Where your attention goes repeatedly, your life tends to follow. If you spend hours consuming outrage, comparison, fear, and distraction, don't be surprised when your mind becomes restless. If you constantly consume other people's lives, you may stop building your own. If every quiet moment must be filled with stimulation, you lose the ability to hear your own thoughts. And if you cannot sit with yourself, you may make decisions simply to escape yourself. Think about that. How many choices are really choices? And how many are escapes? You don't want to feel bored, so you scroll. You don't want to feel uncertain, so you procrastinate. You don't want to feel rejected, so you never ask. You don't want to feel inadequate, so you avoid the challenge. You don't want to feel lonely, so you stay around people who weaken you. You don't want to feel uncomfortable, so you choose comfort. And the strange thing is that the decision works immediately. You feel better for a moment. But what solves discomfort today can create suffering tomorrow. This is why maturity requires the ability to tolerate temporary discomfort. Not because suffering is noble, because some valuable things require discomfort before they become easier. Learning is uncomfortable. Exercise is uncomfortable. Saving can be uncomfortable. Honest conversations are uncomfortable. Starting over is uncomfortable. Being a beginner is uncomfortable. Saying no is uncomfortable. But there is another kind of discomfort. The discomfort of knowing you are wasting your potential. The discomfort of watching years pass. The discomfort of realizing you could have done more. The discomfort of being dependent when you wanted freedom. The discomfort of carrying regret. You are going to experience discomfort either way. The question is, which discomfort builds you? And which one breaks you? That question alone can change your decisions, because when you are tempted to choose the easier path, don't ask only, is this comfortable? Ask, where does this comfort lead? And when you are facing a difficult path, don't ask only, is this hard? Ask, what could this difficulty produce in me? Maybe the hard conversation produces honesty. Maybe the hard workout produces strength. Maybe the difficult study session produces competence. Maybe the rejection produces resilience. Maybe the financial sacrifice produces freedom. Maybe the lonely season produces self-knowledge. Maybe the disciplined year produces an entirely different decade. That's the compound effect. One decision doesn't look powerful, but decisions repeated over time become direction. Directed becomes lifestyle. Lifestyle becomes identity. Identity becomes destiny. And destiny sounds mysterious until you understand that much of it is simply accumulated direction. Imagine two people standing at the same starting point. They make slightly different decisions. One chooses learning more often. The other chooses entertainment more often. One saves a little. The other spends a little. One exercises 3 times a week. The other keeps postponing. One has difficult conversations. The other avoids them. One reads. The other scrolls. One reflects. The other reacts. After one day, almost nothing separates them. After 1 month, maybe a little. After 1 year, noticeable differences. After 5 years, they may look like completely different lives. People will call it luck. They will say, how did he become so disciplined? How did she become so successful? How did they get so confident? But often the answer is hidden in thousands of boring decisions nobody saw. That's why you must learn to respect boring choices. The choice to sleep on time, the choice to save, the choice to practice, the choice to prepare, the choice to walk away, the choice to continue, the choice to keep learning, the choice to say no. None of these choices make a dramatic movie scene, but they build dramatic lives. And perhaps you have been waiting for a dramatic moment to change your life when what you actually need is a quiet decision repeated long enough. That is less exciting, but it is more powerful. Now imagine yourself 3 years from today. There are two versions of you standing there. One version continued exactly as before. Same habits, same excuses, same environment, same distractions, same emotional reactions, same financial patterns, same fear, same procrastination. Look at that person. Don't judge him. Just observe. What did those small decisions become? Now look at the other version. He didn't become perfect. He simply began making better decisions more consistently. He still had bad days. He still failed. He still felt afraid. But he stopped using those things as permanent excuses. He learned. He adjusted. He became more disciplined. He became more selective with his time. He protected his attention. He invested in skills. He saved. He exercised. He built relationships with people who strengthened him. He stopped needing immediate results. Look at his life. What changed? Maybe the biggest difference isn't his circumstances. Maybe it is who he became while creating them. And now ask yourself, which version are today's decisions feeding? That question should not create shame. It should create clarity. Because you don't need to fix your entire life tonight. You need to stop lying to yourself about the direction. If the direction is wrong, change the direction. You can walk slowly in the right direction. You can start small. You can make one decision, then another, then another. The danger is not starting small. The danger is believing small doesn't matter. A single choice matters because it can become a pattern. And a pattern matters because it can become an identity. That is why you should never say, it's only one time. Sometimes one time is exactly how a pattern begins. But don't misunderstand this. You are not required to live in fear of every decision. You are allowed to enjoy life. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to make mistakes. You are allowed to change your mind. The point isn't perfection. The point is consciousness. Stop drifting. Start choosing. There is a huge difference. A drifting person asks, what should I do? A conscious person asks, what am I building? A drifting person follows the easiest option. A conscious person considers consequences. A drifting person reacts. A conscious person responds. A drifting person lets the environment shape him. A conscious person designs the environment. And that brings us to something people underestimate enormously: your environment. You can have tremendous ambition and still repeatedly place yourself in situations that make discipline difficult. If your phone is always beside you, distraction becomes easy. If your friends constantly normalize irresponsibility, responsibility feels strange. If your environment celebrates spending, saving feels restrictive. If everyone around you complains, optimism feels unrealistic. If everyone around you settles, ambition makes you uncomfortable. Your environment doesn't determine everything, but it influences what feels normal. And what feels normal is powerful. So sometimes your future depends on a decision that looks very simple. What will you stop making easy? What will you stop keeping close? What will you stop consuming? What conversations will you stop participating in? What habits will you stop feeding? What environments will you stop returning to? And what will you begin making easier? Put the book where you can see it. Prepare the night before. Remove the distraction. Automate the saving. Discouple the work. Choose the people carefully. Make the right decision easier to repeat. Don't depend on willpower for everything. Design your life so that your better choices have fewer obstacles. Because discipline isn't only about resisting temptation. Sometimes it's about removing temptation from the room. And this matters because your willpower is not unlimited. You are human. You get tired. You become emotional. You become distracted. You have difficult days. So build systems that protect you when your motivation disappears. That is wisdom. And there is another decision that changes everything. The decision to stop identifying with your past. Maybe you have been procrastinating for years. That doesn't mean you are a procrastinator. Maybe you have made financial mistakes. That doesn't mean you are financially irresponsible forever. Maybe you failed. That doesn't mean you are a failure. Maybe you were rejected. That doesn't mean you are unwanted. Maybe you wasted time. That doesn't mean the rest of your life must be wasted. Your past can explain you. It does not have to imprison you, but there is a trap here. Some people use their past as an excuse to remain unchanged. I've always been like this. That's just who I am. No one in my family does that. I'm not disciplined. I'm not good with money. I'm not confident. Be careful with those sentences. Repeated often enough, they stop sounding like descriptions and start becoming instructions. Your mind begins defending the identity you repeatedly declare. So perhaps you need to change the language. Instead of, I'm not disciplined, say, I'm learning discipline. Instead of, I'm terrible with money, say, I'm learning to manage money. Instead of, I'm afraid. Say, I'm learning to act while afraid. That isn't pretending. It is giving yourself a direction. Identity is not only something you discover. It is something you reinforce. Every action tells you who you are becoming. And this is why the smallest promise matters. Make a promise you can keep. Keep it. Then make another. Keep that one. Over time, something begins to happen. You stop needing motivational speeches to believe in yourself. Your behavior becomes the evidence. You don't have to tell yourself you're disciplined. You have proof. You don't have to tell yourself you're resilient. You have survived things. You don't have to tell yourself you're capable. You've developed skills. You don't have to tell yourself you're brave. You've acted while afraid. That is real confidence. And now we reach another difficult subject. Sacrifice. Everybody wants the future. Few people want to pay for it. They want freedom without responsibility, health without discipline, money without patience, expertise without practice, confidence without rejection, success without failure. But every meaningful future has a price. And the price isn't always suffering. Sometimes the price is simply saying no to something good because you want something better. That's hard. Because life is filled with good things that can distract you from great things. A comfortable job may be good. A better opportunity may require risk. A fun weekend may be good. A year of focused work may produce something extraordinary. Buying something may be enjoyable. Investing the money may create options. Sleeping late may feel good. Starting the morning with purpose may build momentum. There is nothing inherently wrong with pleasure. The problem is when pleasure becomes the highest priority, because if pleasure is always the priority, your future becomes whatever remains after you have consumed your present. And you deserve more than leftovers. Your future deserves more than leftovers. Your dreams deserve more than whatever energy remains after distractions have taken everything. Your family deserves more than the exhausted version of you. Your potential deserves more than excuses. And maybe this is why some decisions feel heavy, because they require you to disappoint your present self. Your present self says, come on, just relax. Your future self says, please keep going. Your present self says, you've worked hard enough. Your future self says, one more hour. Your present self says, nobody will know. Your future self says, I will know. That last sentence matters. You can hide from people. You cannot hide from yourself. You carry your decisions. And years later, your memory knows. It remembers the moment you quit. It remembers the moment you stayed silent. It remembers the moment you walked away. It remembers the moment you finally tried. And perhaps some of the deepest pain in life comes from knowing that you betrayed your own potential. Not because you failed, but because you never gave yourself the opportunity to find out what you could become. Imagine reaching old age with money, possessions, photographs, and stories, but carrying one question. What if I had tried? That question can be heavier than failure, because failure gives you information. Regret gives you imagination. It makes you imagine the life that might have existed. That's why you must learn to fail intelligently, take the risk, make the attempt, stick the application, build the thing, start the business, learn the skill, pave the conversation, ask the question. Not recklessly, intelligently. But don't let fear make every decision for you, because fear is very good at presenting temporary discomfort as permanent danger. You think, if I fail, everyone will remember. They won't. You think, if they reject me, I'll never recover. You will. You think, if I start now, I'm too late. Compared to what, another 5 years of waiting? You think, I'm not ready. Maybe you're not. Few people are readiness often grows after action. You learn by doing. You gain confidence by surviving the things you were afraid to attempt. And sometimes the first decision is simply this: I am willing to be a beginner. That sentence can unlock an entirely different life, because beginners make mistakes. Experts once made mistakes too. Confident people once felt insecure. Disciplined people once struggled to control themselves. Successful people once had empty calendars, empty bank accounts, empty rooms, empty opportunities. They built, they learned, they chose, and they continued choosing. Now I want you to think about time. Not time as a schedule. Time as a non-renewable resource. Money can return. Opportunities can return. Relationships can sometimes be repaired, but yesterday doesn't return. And this creates a strange responsibility. Every day you spend is gone. You cannot save Tuesday for later. You cannot store an hour. You cannot refund a wasted year. And yet we often treat time as if it were unlimited. We spend hours on things we wouldn't spend money on. We give attention to people who give us nothing back. We consume information we don't use. We complain about not having enough time while giving our best hours away. Then we say, I don't know where the years went. The years didn't disappear. They were spent. That's different. And when you understand that, you become more protective. You start asking, is this worth my life? Not just, is this worth my time? My life. Because your time is your life measured in smaller units. If you spend 3 hours doing something every day for years, you aren't just spending 3 hours. You are spending a portion of your life. That realization can be painful, but pain can create clarity, and clarity can create better decisions. Maybe you don't need more time. Maybe you need fewer things competing for the time you already have. Maybe you don't need another productivity trick. Maybe you need to decide what matters. Because focus is not simply the ability to concentrate. Focus is the willingness to disappoint everything that doesn't matter, and that requires courage. You cannot say yes to everything and still give your best to something. Every yes contains a hidden no. When you say yes to endless entertainment, you're saying no to development. When you say yes to every request, you're saying no to some of your priorities. When you say yes to distraction, you're saying no to depth. When you say yes to instant gratification, you're sometimes saying no to long-term freedom. Your future is shaped by these hidden no's. And perhaps one of the greatest gifts you can give your future self is permission to say no without guilt. No, not because you are cruel, because your life has boundaries. Your attention has boundaries. Your energy has boundaries. Your time has boundaries, and if you don't choose those boundaries consciously, other people will choose them for you. Think about the people you love. What kind of person do you want to be for them? Someone constantly exhausted? Someone financially unstable? Someone emotionally reactive? Someone who never has time? Or someone strong enough to contribute? Someone disciplined enough to be dependable? Someone emotionally mature enough to listen? Someone financially responsible enough to create security? Your decisions are not only about you. They affect people who may depend on the person you become. That is another reason to grow, not shame, responsibility. There is dignity in becoming dependable. And perhaps this is what maturity really means. Not becoming serious all the time. Becoming responsible for the consequences of your choices. You can laugh, you can enjoy life, you can dream, you can rest, but you understand that choices have consequences. You stop blaming reality for obeying the laws of cause and effect. You plant something, something grows. You practice something, you improve. You neglect something, it deteriorates. You spend everything, you have less. You protect your attention, you think more clearly. You feed resentment, it grows. You practice gratitude, perspective changes. You repeatedly choose courage. Courage becomes more familiar. Cause and effect doesn't care about your mood. And that is good news, because it means your future is not entirely random. You can influence it. You can make better causes. You can build better patterns. You can change direction, maybe not overnight, but definitely over time. Now imagine 5 years, not 5 months, 5 years. 5 years is long enough for almost every major area of your life to look different. Your body can change, your income can change, your skills can change, your relationships can change, your confidence can change, your knowledge can change, your environment can change, your identity can change. But 5 years will pass whether you use them or not. That's the part people forget. You don't have to decide whether 5 years will pass. They will. Your only decision is what those 5 years are allowed to produce. And that means the question isn't, can I transform my life this week? The better question is, what can I consistently do for 5 years? Because consistency makes small actions dangerous in the best possible way. A little learning every day, a little saving every month, a little exercise every week, a little courage in every difficult conversation, a little less distraction, a little more reflection, a little more patience, a little more responsibility. It doesn't look spectacular until it compounds. Then one day people notice, they ask what happened. You may not even know how to answer, because nothing happened. Everything happened every morning. Every decision. Every time you chose differently. Every time you kept going. Every time you refused to become your old self again. That's how a new life is built. Not through one dramatic moment. Through repeated alignment. Your actions begin matching your values. Your values begin shaping your identity. Your identity begins shaping your behavior. And your behavior begins shaping your circumstances. That cycle can work against you, or it can work for you. So let me ask you something very personal. What decision have you been postponing? Don't answer quickly. Think. What do you already know? What conversation? What habit? What financial choice? What career move? What boundary? What beginning? What ending? What commitment? What are you waiting to feel before you act? Confidence? Certainty? Permission? Maybe you are waiting for fear to disappear. But what if fear isn't leaving? What if you have to move with it? Maybe you are waiting for everyone to support you. What if they don't? Maybe you're waiting for the perfect time. What if there isn't one? Maybe you're waiting to become a different person before making different decisions. But perhaps making different decisions is how you become that person. That's the paradox. You don't always act because you feel like the person you want to become. Sometimes you act first. Then your identity catches up. You behave like a disciplined person before you feel disciplined. You behave like a responsible person before responsibility feels natural. You behave like a courageous person before courage feels comfortable. And eventually, the behavior becomes familiar. The unfamiliar becomes normal, and the normal becomes identity. This is why today's decision matters, not because one decision will magically transform your life, because one decision can begin a different pattern. And patterns are powerful. Now think about the opposite. What if you keep postponing? 1 week becomes 1 month, 1 month becomes 1 year, 1 year becomes 5. And eventually the decision becomes harder because the consequences have grown. That's how small neglect becomes large regret. The neglected skill becomes a lost opportunity. The neglected health becomes a serious limitation. The neglected relationship becomes distance. The neglected financial habit becomes dependence. The neglected dream becomes bitterness. Neglect is quiet. That's why it's dangerous. It doesn't usually scream. It whispers. Later. And later sounds harmless until you realize how much of your life was handed to it. There is a reason later is one of the most expensive words in the human vocabulary. Because later assumes you are guaranteed another chance. You are not guaranteed another chance. You are given today. And today doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be used consciously. You don't need to solve your entire future today. You need to stop sacrificing your future for temporary comfort. That's different. And perhaps your future self isn't asking you for some enormous sacrifice. Maybe he is asking for one decision, one honest conversation, 1 hour of focused work, one boundary, one saved amount, one application, one workout, one page, one lesson, one night of proper rest, one refusal, one beginning, small enough that you can actually do it, but meaningful enough to change the direction. And once direction changes, time becomes your ally. That is what people miss. Time can be your enemy when your habits are wrong. Time can be your greatest partner when your habits are right. Give bad habits 5 years and they become chains. Give good habits 5 years and they become foundations. So don't fear slow progress. Fear consistent progress in the wrong direction. Because speed is not the first question. Direct is. A person walking slowly toward a meaningful life is not behind. A person running quickly toward the wrong life is not ahead. And maybe you've spent too much time asking, how fast can I get there? Ask, is this the right direction? Then, can I keep walking? That's wisdom. Because life is not a sprint toward a finish line you can see. It is a series of choices whose consequences gradually reveal themselves. And you are always becoming, even when you are doing nothing. That is difficult to accept. You think doing nothing means staying the same. It doesn't. Your skills may decline. Your body may change. Your relationships may weaken. Your opportunities may disappear. Your tolerance for comfort may increase. Your fear may become stronger. Inaction is also a decision. Silence is also a decision. Delay is also a decision. So if you don't choose your direction, circumstances will choose one for you. And circumstances are rarely interested in your potential. They simply respond to behavior. This is why responsibility is so empowering. Because once you stop waiting for the world to rescue you, you begin looking for what is within your control. Maybe you can't control the economy, but you can build skills. Maybe you can't control other people's opinions, but you can build character. Maybe you can't control rejection, but you can't control your response. Maybe you can't control your past, but you can influence your next decision. Maybe you can't control how quickly success comes, but you can control whether you continue developing. That's enough. You don't need control over everything. You need control over what is yours to control. And perhaps the strongest version of you isn't the person who never struggles. Maybe it's the person who stops allowing struggle to make every decision. That person still gets tired, still gets disappointed, still feels fear, still has bad days. But there is something different. They know what matters. They know what they are willing to sacrifice. They know what they will no longer tolerate. They know what kind of person they want to become. And because they know they can say no, they can keep going, they can wait, they can work, they can walk away. They can start again. That is strength. Not noise, not aggression, not pretending you don't care. Strength is having an internal standard strong enough to guide you when external circumstances become confusing. And there will be confusing seasons. There will be times when the right decision doesn't produce immediate results. Times when you wonder whether your sacrifice is worth it. Times when other people seem to be enjoying themselves while you are working. Times when you question your direction. That's when you need to remember something. Results are not always immediate evidence of correctness. Sometimes the result is the person you are becoming. You may not have the money yet, but you have the skill. You may not have the opportunity yet, but you have the preparation. You may not have the confidence yet, but you have the courage to continue. You may not have the outcome yet, but you have built capacity. Capacity matters. Because when opportunity arrives, an unprepared person sees luck. A prepared person sees responsibility. And that's another reason to make choices your future self will thank you for. You are preparing a future you to handle opportunities that today's you cannot even see. Imagine receiving the opportunity you have always wanted, but being unprepared for it. Imagine finally getting the interview, but lacking the skill. Imagine finally having money, but lacking financial discipline. Imagine finally gaining influence, but lacking character. Imagine finally getting freedom, but lacking self-control. The future doesn't only require opportunities, it requires capacity. So every good decision is training. Every difficult practice session, every saved dollar, every book studied, every boundary established, every temptation resisted, every failure examined, every uncomfortable conversation. You are building capacity. And one day, perhaps sooner than you think, the life you wanted will demand the person you have been preparing to become. Will that person be ready? That's a question worth living with. Because perhaps the future isn't simply something you arrive at. Perhaps it is something you prepare for. And preparation is rarely dramatic. It looks like today, this ordinary day, this normal morning. This decision nobody is celebrating. This moment where you could choose distraction but choose focus. This moment where you could choose an excuse but choose responsibility. This moment where you could choose immediate pleasure but choose future freedom. This moment where you could choose the old identity but choose the new one. That is where transformation lives, not somewhere far away. Here, now, in the small space between impulse and decision, that space is where your power lives. Something happens. You feel something, then you choose. Most people think the feeling and the action are connected automatically. They aren't. There is a gap. And the stronger you become, the more deliberately you use that gap. You feel anger. You don't have to speak immediately. You feel fear. You don't have to retreat immediately. You feel temptation. You don't have to obey immediately. You feel disappointment. You don't have to quit immediately. You feel doubt. You don't have to believe every thought immediately. That gap is freedom. And the more you practice it, the stronger your self-control becomes. You stop being controlled by every emotion that passes through you. You become the observer, then the decision maker, then the person responsible for the response. That is emotional maturity. And it changes relationships. It changes leadership. It changes business. It changes parenting. It changes friendship. It changes your relationship with yourself. Because the person who can pause before reacting can choose better. And better choices create better consequences. Not always immediately, but over time. Now think about the future self again. 5 years from now, that person will live with the consequences of today's emotional decisions. He will live with what you ate, what you spent, what you learned, what you ignored, what you practiced. who you stayed around, what you tolerated, what you believed, what you repeatedly told yourself. That future person is not imaginary. He is coming. You don't know his exact circumstances. You don't know what opportunities will appear. You don't know what challenges will arrive. But you know one thing, he will inherit something from you, your decisions. So when you make a choice today, imagine handing it to him. Here, this is what I decided for you. This is the habit I gave you. This is the financial situation I left you. This is the body I gave you. This is the skill I built for you. This is the courage I practiced for you. This is the relationship I protected for you. This is the time I wasted for you. This is the fear I obeyed for you. This is the opportunity I took for you. Which gifts do you want to hand him? Which burdens? That question changes the emotional meaning of an ordinary decision. A meal isn't just a meal. It's a message to your future body. An hour isn't just an hour. It's a piece of your future. A purchase isn't just a purchase. It's a financial direction. A conversation isn't just a conversation. It can shape a relationship for years. A thought isn't just a thought when you repeat it. It becomes a belief. A belief becomes a behavior. A behavior becomes a pattern. A pattern becomes a life. So be careful what you rehearse. You are practicing something every day. The question is what? You are becoming more comfortable with something. The question is what? You are strengthening something. The question is what? Maybe you are strengthening distraction. Maybe you are strengthening discipline. Maybe you are strengthening fear. Maybe you are strengthening courage. Maybe you are strengthening resentment. Maybe you are strengthening gratitude. Maybe you are strengthening dependence. Maybe you are strengthening independence. Whatever you repeatedly practice becomes easier. That is both the warning and the opportunity. Because if you don't like the direction, you can practice something different. Not instantly, but repeatedly. And eventually the new behavior becomes easier. The brain learns, the body adapts, the identity shifts, the environment responds, the results accumulate. This is why you should not underestimate a new beginning simply because it feels small. A new beginning is not judged by how impressive it looks. It is judged by where it points. 1 degree of difference in direction can create an enormous difference over distance. You don't need to see the entire road. You need to know the next honest step. Then take it, then reassess, then continue. And if you make a mistake, correct. If you fall, rise. If the plan fails, learn. If the direction is wrong, change it. You are not required to defend an old decision forever, simply because you made it. Changing your mind can be wisdom. Walking away can be strength. Starting again can be courage. Apologizing can be maturity. Asking for help can be strength. Admitting you were wrong can be progress. The future self you want is not a perfect person. He is an honest person, a responsible person, a person who learns, a person who keeps moving, a person who no longer needs to pretend. And perhaps that is what makes this entire idea so powerful. You are not making choices for some abstract future. You are making choices for a human being. You, a future you who will have fears, a future you who will have dreams, a future you who will wake up one morning and look back. What will he remember about you? Will he remember that you were afraid? Everyone is afraid. Will he remember that you failed? Everyone fails. Will he remember that things were difficult? They are difficult for everyone. Maybe what he will remember is whether you kept going when it was difficult, whether you protected your potential, whether you respected your own word, whether you chose the long-term path when the short-term path was easier, whether you gave yourself a real chance. And there is something beautiful about giving yourself a real chance. You don't have to guarantee success. You don't have to guarantee wealth. You don't have to guarantee that every dream comes true. You simply have to stop guaranteeing failure by refusing to try. That's different. Give yourself the opportunity. Give yourself the years. Give yourself the discipline. Give yourself the patience. Give yourself the education. Give yourself the experience. Give yourself permission to become someone you haven't been before. And when you feel behind, remember, you are not competing with your past. You are responsible for your next decision. That's where your power remains. Not in yesterday. Not in 5 years from now. Here, this decision, this moment. And perhaps you're thinking, but what if I have wasted too much time? Then stop wasting more. What if you made terrible decisions? Learn. What if you started late? Start now. What if people don't believe in you? Build evidence. What if you're afraid? Act carefully while afraid. What if you've failed repeatedly? Study the pattern. What if you're tired? Rest without abandoning the mission. What if you don't know the entire path? Take the next step. You do not need to know everything. You need enough clarity for the next decision, and then another, and another. This is how people rebuild. Quickly, without announcements. Without needing permission. One better choice at a time, and maybe nobody notices for a while. That's okay. Your future self will. There will come a day when you realize that the thing you once struggled to do has become normal. The early morning becomes normal. The saving becomes normal. The exercise becomes normal. The study becomes normal. The boundary becomes normal. The discipline becomes normal. And you will wonder why it once felt impossible. It wasn't impossible. It was unfamiliar. There is a difference. You were asking yourself to become someone your nervous system didn't recognize yet, so it resisted. But repetition teaches the mind. This is who we are now. And eventually the decision becomes identity. That's why consistency is so powerful. Not because you never break, because every return strengthens the pattern. If you miss a day, return. If you miss a week, return. If you lose momentum, return. Do not turn a mistake into an identity. Do not turn a bad chapter into the entire book. Return. The future doesn't require perfection. It requires direction. And perhaps you need to hear that because somewhere along the way, you started believing that if you couldn't do everything, you shouldn't do anything. That's another trap. You don't need a perfect diet. You need better choices more often. You don't need perfect finances. You need better decisions consistently. You don't need perfect discipline. You need to stop making excuses your permanent strategy. You don't need to know everything. You need to keep learning. Progress is not purity. Progress is movement. And movement creates evidence. Evidence creates confidence. Confidence creates larger action. Larger action creates larger results. That's another compound effect. So don't wait for the feeling. Build the evidence. Don't wait to feel confident. Do something that gives you a reason to become confident. Don't wait to feel disciplined. Keep one promise. Don't wait to feel ready. Prepare and begin. Don't wait for your future to become certain. Make the next decision intelligently. There is a strange kind of peace that comes when you stop demanding certainty from life. You can say, I don't know exactly what will happen, but I know what kind of person I want to be when it happens. That is enough. You may not control the storm, but you can strengthen the person holding the wheel. And perhaps your life is asking you for that right now. Not another prediction, not another guarantee. A stronger decision maker. A person who can think beyond today. A person who can pause. A person who can sacrifice. A person who can recover. A person who can learn. A person who can say no. A person who can say yes. A person who can keep going. And perhaps the deepest question isn't, what do I want my future to look like? Maybe it's, who must I become for that future to be possible? Because sometimes you don't need a new goal. You need a new standard. You don't need another dream. You need a different relationship with your decisions. You don't need more information. You need more implementation. You don't need another year to think. You may need one day to choose, and the choice may not feel dramatic. It may feel ordinary. But remember what ordinary decisions become when repeated. A choice becomes a habit. A habit becomes a character trait. A character trait becomes a reputation. A reputation becomes opportunity. And opportunity changes circumstances. That is why your smallest decisions deserve respect. The world may never applaud them. Do them anyway. Because your future self is watching from a distance you cannot cross. He cannot speak to you. He cannot warn you. He cannot send a message backward through time. But he exists as a consequence. Every morning, you are writing a sentence in his life. Every decision adds another word. Some sentences will be painful. Some will be beautiful. Some will be lessons. Some will be victories. But you are writing. And perhaps today is one of those pages where you have to decide what kind of sentence comes next. Will it be another excuse? Another delay? Another compromise? Or something different? Not something dramatic. Something honest. Something you can repeat. Something your future self can build upon. Because one day you will meet him, not literally, but in the mirror. You will wake up years from now and realize that the person looking back at you was shaped by the decisions of someone who lived long before that morning. That someone was you. And I hope that when you meet him, he recognizes the sacrifices. I hope he recognizes the courage. I hope he recognizes the discipline. I hope he recognizes the nights when you wanted to quit, but didn't. The mornings when you didn't feel like it. The moments when you said no. The moments when you started again. The opportunities you took, the distractions you rejected, the money you saved, the skills you built, the boundaries you protected, the fear you faced, the mistakes you learned from. And maybe most importantly, I hope he knows that you did not abandon him for temporary comfort, because there will always be another distraction, another excuse, another reason to wait, another voice saying, tomorrow. But there is also another voice, quieter, more patient, the voice of the person you are becoming. And perhaps you can hear it when the room is quiet, not demanding perfection, just asking for alignment, asking you to make the next decision with him in mind, to choose the action that gives him more options. More strength, more freedom, more wisdom, more peace, more self-respect. And maybe the choice is difficult. Good difficulty doesn't automatically mean it's right. But difficulty can reveal what matters. So don't run from every difficult decision. Sit with it. Look at the consequences. Look beyond the immediate emotion. Ask what happens if you repeat this for a year. Ask what happens if you repeat it for 5. Ask who you become. Ask what your future self inherits. Then choose, not perfectly, to consciously. And if you make the wrong choice, don't waste another decision defending it. Correct. If you fall, don't waste another day explaining why you fell. Rise if you lose. Learn if you fail. Adjust if you begin late. Begin anyway, because your future is not asking you to erase your past. It is asking you to stop repeating it unconsciously. There is still time to make better choices. There is still time to build. There's still time to learn. There's still time to become more disciplined. There is still time to protect your health. There is still time to repair what can be repaired. There is still time to walk away from what must be left behind. There is still time to create something meaningful. But don't confuse there is still time with there is unlimited time. Those are not the same. You have time. Use it. You have choices. Choose them. You have influence. Exercise it. You have another day. Don't spend it asleep inside your own life. And when tomorrow comes, you will face another decision, then another, then another. And somewhere inside those ordinary moments, something will be changing. Perhaps so quietly that you won't notice. Until one morning, you wake up and realize you have become the person you used to hope you could become. And when you look backward at the road, you may not remember every decision, but you will remember the direction. You will remember that there was a season when you could have continued exactly as before. And you chose differently. There was a season when comfort was easier. And you chose growth. There was a season when fear was loud. And you chose courage. There was a season when nobody believed. And you chose to keep building. There was a season when the results were invisible. And you chose patience. There was a season when quitting would have been understandable. And you chose one more step. And perhaps that is what your future self is asking from you right now. Not to become extraordinary overnight, not to know the entire future, not to guarantee success. Just to make the next choice worthy of the person you are becoming, then make another and another. Because the life you will one day call your own is being shaped in these moments that seem too small to matter. And maybe the next decision you make is one your future self has been waiting years to thank you for.